Sometimes we think of healing very fluffy. We think of it as like going to the spa and doing self-care and, drinking green juice or something, right? Like sometimes it has this very kind of fluffy, superficial quality. The healing that I know that I've seen, because I've worked in addiction treatment centers and I've worked with patients that have all kinds of mental health issues and physical health issues and terminal illness and all the things. I've seen all the patients, people that are on like a really sincere healing journey are working very, very hard. And it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of resilience and it takes a lot of resources and support. Like I was mentioning before, it's arduous. It's a warrior's path. And I think one of the reasons there's been so much stigma around mental health and mental illness is because it's somehow associated with being like weak or being less than. And like doing mental health work, doing that work of confronting your shadow and integrating all these things and taking accountability and changing those patterns and dealing with your trauma, like that whole process is a warrior's path. That's a lot of work. And I agree with you that it's not meant to be all done in like, a period of time where we sort of give up all of the other things in life. We are supposed to continue to have joy and we are supposed to continue to have balance. And I do think taking breaks, if you are doing that arduous work, I do think that that's an important part of the path.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Psychedelic Conversations. Today we have Gabrielle Pelicci, Dr. Gabby, also known as. Welcome. So lovely to meet you.
Thank you, Susan. It's so fun to be here with you across the sea on this recording.
It is. It's an absolute pleasure. And thank you for creating this space and time for us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Great. Just as always, I'd like to give a bit of a context of your background to our listeners, and then we can dive in. So, Dr. Gabby, you're an author, professor, head of provider relations at Third Wave, Ph.D., and you have research-based psychedelics education and community platform. Dr. Gabby completed her doctoral work in transformative studies at the California Institute of Integral Studies with dissertation on women healers, which is super interesting, and studies plant medicine with indigenous healers in New Mexico and Guatemala. And you have been a university professor of integrative and holistic medicine since 2007. And most excitingly, your book, All This Healing is Killing Me, a memoir, which is available on Amazon. We'll put all the links in the show notes for our listeners if they want to connect with you and check out your book.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. That was a good summary.
Thank you. And so let's begin with what brings you to this work initially.
Oh, God. I think if you read my book, All This Healing is Killing Me, you'll have an idea of why I'm doing all the work. I've had a very long healing journey, personal healing journey. And on my path, as I was exploring different things to heal my own mind, body, and spirit, I studied deeper and deeper into psychology and holistic medicine and yoga and meditation and mind body medicine and all of the things. And I, practiced all of these things for my whole career and started teaching them and sharing them with others. And eventually wound up in the world of psychedelics. If you had asked me a few years ago would I be working in psychedelics, I would have told you no way, because I was a very purist. I thought like all the world needed really for healing was breath work and yoga and meditation and, healthy diet, healthy lifestyle. But I serendipitously ended up during the pandemic living and working with some medicine women in Guatemala and New Mexico, as you mentioned, and they introduced me first to peyote and then to psilocybin and then to ayahuasca. And as I got to learn the plants and develop a relationship with the plants and integrate them into my own practice, I saw the tremendous healing potential that they actually have. And now I have a whole new perspective on what's possible with that kind of medicine. So that's how I ended up here. And I currently work for a company called Third Wave, and we provide education. We have a certification program, and then we have personal psychedelic coaching for people that want to have an experience of taking the medicine and working with the medicine. And I'm in charge of our provider directory. So we have a large directory that includes all of the clinics and retreats and clinicians and coaches that are doing this work, and people can come, and that's a free resource to the community. They can find resources where they live that they can use for their own health and well-being. So that's how it all fits together.
That's so wonderful. And that's how we met. It's so beautiful. I love your work. I love what you bring to the world. And before we get into your book, I just wanted to ask you about your background and being a purist, and then also now, moving or transitioning into the medicine work. You did study at the Integral Studies, at the California Institute of Integral Studies. So what was that like? Because I've met so many people who graduated from there, or at least studied there, and also dissertation on women healers. Like, did that kind of tied into the time spent in Guatemala during pandemic, or was it just like your personal quest? Was it kind of related to your background of studies?
Yeah, another really good question. And if you read my book, All This Healing is Killing Me, you'll get the full story. I will give you the abbreviated version of the story, which is that I enrolled in that program more than 20 years ago. It was 2001 when I enrolled at the California Institute of Integral Studies. And it just felt like the perfect fit for me because it's an academic research-based program, doctoral program, but you have the freedom to explore things that are a bit more fringe, things around transpersonal psychology or spiritual practices, or, even they have a psychedelic certification program as well that they've had for many years. So it just felt like it was a great balance for me of the academic in me and the spiritual seeker in me. And so that's why I was attracted to it. I was also doing certifications in a lot of different modalities like energy medicine and massage therapy and things. And I found in the literature that there wasn't a lot of literature about women healers. Like, we had a lot of women healers historically, like 10,000 years ago. And then during the Middle Ages, we had the witch hunts and this sort of eradication and suppression of women in medicine. And I really felt like there was like a lot of lineage there, a lot of history, a lot of story that was hidden or lost. And I wanted to explore that. And so I started diving deep into women who were practicing medicine in all different traditions. So, women who were doing indigenous medicine, Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, medicines of different countries and cultures, and speaking to them about their practice, speaking to them about what it meant to them to be a female healer, what their history was, what their life path, their lifestyle was. And I recorded all of that and completed that research in 2006. And then I started teaching. So since 2006, I've been teaching all kinds of different holistic and integrative medicine modalities. And that theme of women doing medicine has just always stayed really present with me. So when I ended up working with the women in Guatemala and New Mexico, I was doing a permaculture and herbalism certification, just again, to sort of deepen my own practice, deepen my awareness, get more connected to the earth, get more connected to the plants, just can continue on the journey of healing myself and learning more about healing. And so, they just became another chapter in my research about women and about different kinds of medicine.
That's amazing. And why Guatemala? And of course, New Mexico as well. But why Guatemala specifically? Is there any reason, or just your personal interest?
Yeah, there was a teacher who was offering a program there that I really wanted to study with, and she gathered a bunch of women healers. There were several faculty for that training, and that's where it was offered. It was offered at Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, which is a kind of a power center for Indigenous women. Women make a lot of crafts there and textiles, and there was women that were cultivating mushrooms and herbs, and there was a lineage of midwives that when they're a teenager, they have this prophetic dream of that they're going to become a midwife, and then that's part of their initiation into, you know, the traditional training of medicine there. So it's just a place that's very rich in terms of Indigenous medicine and culture and art. And the woman that I wanted to study with happened to be offering the program there. And so it was a month-long program where we lived there and we studied there. And yeah, that's why I ended up in Guatemala. New Mexico was a different story. I had been building earth ships. So earth ships are sustainable housing that are off-grid, and they are completely self-sustaining. Like, they capture the rain for water and the light for energy, and they don't use any heating or air conditioning because they have a convection system that's like built into the structure. And so I was volunteering to build these in Puerto Rico, and then I went to the New Mexico to study the academy there, and ended up finding and living with this medicine woman in New Mexico while I was building earth ships. So my journey is a little bit unusual because I like to explore a lot of different things and things that are outside the mainstream, because I really believe that we need to find solutions that are different than what we're doing. We need different kinds of housing. We need different kinds of medicine. We need a different approach if we are going to, have a sustainable future, because a lot of the things that we're doing right now are just not working.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That really resonates. Looking and exploring to find other solutions and other ways of living, especially the post-pandemic era now has began this more of exploring out of the box solutions and creating more sustainability for a lot of us. For a lot of people that I meet, they always talk about this. It's really great to hear. And coming back to Guatemala, I have quite a few friends also exploring there. And from what you're saying, I hear that it's very rich in terms of a lot of tradition and culture. So no wonder, and especially for women. So coming back to your dissertation, what was the biggest thing that stood out for you around this women healers and the fact that, they are all over the globe, right? There is this whole lineage about the women healing. So what could you say to us about your research findings, let's say?
Yeah, I had 6 themes that I determined from the stories that I collected. One of those themes was support. All of the healers said to me that the path of being a healer is a path of ongoing transformation. There's always these cycles happening in your life of life, death, and rebirth. There's this constant unfolding, and that really, to do your best work, you need a really strong support system so that you can explore the deepest parts of yourself and make those changes that you need to make, because it's only going where you need to go in your own healing that you're able to support others to do that same work. And so you really need a strong support system, was like one of the themes. Another one of the themes was the fact that it's not a linear path. It's a very cyclical path, kind of like the seasons where we have winter, spring, summer, and fall, that your life is always unfolding in that cyclical way. And to be aware of that, and to be aware of what season that you're in as it's unfolding, is part of something that this wisdom that they've gathered from, life of doing these practices. Another consistent message that came from the women was the relationship with nature, that we're not separate from nature, that, nature is a tool for healing. It's part of who we are. It's, a resource for us. And also Women use nature, spending time in nature and exploring nature as a means of restoration and a means of connection and collecting different kinds of wisdom. So nature was a huge part of the research. I could go on and on, but the themes were things that I had heard repeatedly from these women. I also write about it in my book, All This Healing is Killing Me. There's a section in my book where I explore, what I learned at the university and what I learned in the dissertation research. So if you want to go deeper, if you want to read the full story, it's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wonderful. And I'm glad you're giving us kind of like the sort of skimming through the book and your also your journey and what you have learned and your wisdom. So one of the things you said really stood out for me, which is healing as a cyclical, or is it transformation as a cyclical process. This really resonates because I'm sure you have a lot to say, and I'm sure we're going to tie into your book. The title is so fascinating and interesting for me, which I'd like to tie in now, actually. So in the West, somehow there is a need to seek for healing, right? I think now, especially with the psychedelic medicines, this is kind of like the main theme. Well, especially in the Western model, let's say, it's almost like we all must heal before we can live. It's like we all must figure this thing out, transform, change, arrive at a point, and then we can finally get to live. So when you say that, it kind of very confrontational, because I am aware that some of these, indigenous practices, or at least wisdom traditions, they always saw this as a progress. It's not, you don't take this big chunk of time out of your life to heal so that you can come back and live. It's actually the other way around. You bring the healing home. You bring the cyclical nature of the transformation home, meaning it's okay to take a break from healing. It's okay to go and live and do other things and then come back, when time feels right. What are your thoughts on that? And is that kind of connected to the reason you wrote your book?
That's really insightful. And I agree with you. I think we approach healing in the West the same way we approach everything else, which is just this attack and conquer mentality, right? This cure it and fix it and force it. I think that's a very strong trait that we have, very, common approach that we have in the West. The name just came to me when I was writing. It came to me because a couple of reasons. I mean, one is that there are different versions of healing as a modality. Like sometimes we think of healing very fluffy. We think of it as going to the spa and doing self-care and, drinking green juice or something, right? Like sometimes it has this very kind of fluffy, superficial quality. The healing that I know that I've seen, because I've worked in addiction treatment centers and I've worked with patients that have all kinds of mental health issues and physical health issues and terminal illness and all the things. I've seen all the patients, people that are on a really sincere healing journey are working very, very hard. And it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of resilience and it takes a lot of resources and support. Like I was mentioning before, it's arduous. It's a warrior's path. And I think, one of the reasons there's been so much stigma around mental health and mental illness is because it's somehow associated with being weak or being less than. And doing mental health work, doing that work of confronting your shadow and integrating all these things and taking accountability and changing those patterns and dealing with your trauma, that whole process is a warrior's path. That's a lot of work and it's really hard work. And I agree with you that it's not meant to be all done in a period of time where we sort of give up all of the other things in life. We are supposed to continue to have joy and we are supposed to continue to have balance. And I do think taking breaks, if you are doing that arduous work, I do think that that's an important part of the path. I think for me, it was just kind of the irony of the difference between healing and then the just getting burnt out on all the healing and how ironic it is that you're doing this healing and that it is so, I mean, transformative isn't even the right word. I mean, people that are really on this path, as a lot of the psychedelics, enthusiasts are, sometimes these healing experiences are like full ego death, full, like, all your values breaking, your mindset breaking, your belief system, your paradigm. I mean, some of these experiences are shattering, like completely shattering, and you're like reconfiguring yourself like as a new person, and it's just, to me, it's endlessly fascinating. It just continues to be the most interesting thing about being human to me. The fact that we could reinvent ourselves so many times, the fact that there is so much depth and complexity to who we are, mind, body, spirit. I mean, it's so fascinating to me. I just like never get bored with it.
Yeah, it is. It's really rich, especially if you are in this space of transformation, transpersonal spaces of, especially I think the psychedelic medicines bring so much richness to the experience and potential to open different dimensions and ways of thinking and working with, the trauma healing, or at least the transformational process. I really love that. So your book is addressing the whole healing transformational processes, and I'm really looking forward to check it out, and I'm sure our audience are already intrigued by especially the title of it. Now, like, I'm observing in the psychedelic space of the psychedelic renaissance, we call it, this current, what is happening in the space, and so much of it is more from the mental health model, or at least trauma healing. It's just inevitable. Would you say it's inevitable to exploring psychedelic medicines? It's just that you end up in this healing process. Like, do you speak to, or do you have any experience with just, connecting with people, just exploring psychedelics for creativity or something else, or just, consciousness evolution, understanding the world and life? Do you kind of have that kind of experience with people, not just trauma?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the really cool things about the Third Wave coaching program, the company that I work for, is that is the focus of the curriculum. The focus of the curriculum is around microdosing and using those microdoses for exactly what you're saying, for, increasing your creative thought, and for, brainstorming new ideas. And there's a lot of examples of entrepreneurs and different, musicians and artists that have used psychedelics in exactly the way that you're talking about, just to create new insight, to, stimulate their creativity. It's great for biohacking and for leadership trainings. And it's so versatile. It's so versatile. And there are so many different kinds of psychedelics that influence you in different ways. And not all of them are legal right now, obviously, right? In the US, like, ketamine is the only thing that's legal, and we've started to legalize psilocybin. So we still have a long way to go in terms of, decriminalization and that sort of thing. But nonetheless, people have been practicing and using these different substances. And I think it's going to have mass adoption. That's my prediction. I think there's going to be mass adoption in the same way that we've seen adoption of non-psychedelic mushrooms, right? We have all these kind of mushroom beverages, and we've just seen adoption of all these things that enhance our resilience, enhance our cognition, enhance, and I think that, collectively, we're all wanting to optimize more and more, right? We're all wanting to, maximize our learning and our retention and our beingness, right? Our beingness, our sense of connectedness. There's a lot of couples that are using psychedelics to just make their relationships better, more fun. And it's not necessarily coming from a place of trauma recovery. It's just coming from wanting to connect more with their loved ones, So there's unlimited applications. And I agree with you. Like, I think we're going to see more and more adoption for just making life more fun, for sure.
Yeah. And with this, what are your observations around you, especially in the US? Obviously, I'm looking and observing from, UK, and it's quite, you can imagine it's a lot reserved where we are, and kind of following the footsteps of US. I know interestingly, we have the most body of work in research and studies, like Imperial College, and some of these places have been incredible in carrying out some of the most compelling, research studies. And even that, still, UK happens to be a very reserved country for when it comes to talking about psychedelics. And of course, US are doing and striving really forward with bringing lots of different ways to somehow decriminalize, at least bringing it into for the therapeutic use. So what are your observations? What are you seeing in the next couple of years, especially in the US, in terms of psychedelics?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a war against drugs in the US for like 50 years. I mean, it's just crazy. I think that, there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen in order for people to erase that feeling, that stigma, that fear around these medicines, because we've been told for the last 40 or 50 years, like how toxic and how dangerous and how terrible these things are. And so there's a lot of work to be done to overcome that. The younger people, like what I see is younger people, like they're just like, they haven't had that history of hearing those messages for so long, and they don't have that resistance. So I do see a lot of this movement being driven by people in their 20s and 30s. Like I see like that as being the kind of enlightened generation of like, moving this forward without the resistance and without that, that stigma. I think that there are lessons to be learned from the mistakes that we made in the 1960s. I think we made a lot of bad mistakes, first time around. I think we do need to proceed with a level of maturity and safety and ethics and caution. And I don't think we should just, like unleash all of the psychedelics everywhere. I mean, I wouldn't want to see anyone be harmed with any of these, so it does take time to make sure that we understand the efficacy of them, the contraindications of them, like who should be using them, who shouldn't, what should they be using, how should they be using it, how often should they be using it. Like, we have a lot of work to do to figure out that stuff, to be able to safely recommend things to people, for people to be able to use them safely. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. So I do think that I do think that it's smart to have some caution for sure, but I think it should be caution balanced with enthusiasm. I mean, I am very enthusiastic, right? So I do think that there should be the balance of enthusiasm and maturity about, bringing these medicines to mainstream again. And I don't know. I haven't spent much time in Europe recently. So I don't really know. I can't say if the climate is how similar or different the climate is to the US. In the US, I'm hanging out with people who are excited about psychedelics. So I'm in a bubble, because all my friends love mushrooms, and all my friends do microdosing, and all my friends love plant medicine and go to plant medicine ceremonies. And so I'm in kind of a bubble. And I don't think that I have good perspective on the whole world when it comes to their, opinions and feelings.
Yeah. But thank you. That's yeah. We're definitely, in a very interesting times right now when it comes to psychedelic medicines. So your experience with peyote, like some of the medicines that you said you were in Guatemala working with peyote, what was that like? Because for our audience, maybe you can tell us what it is, how it affects us, and why it's the purpose of its use, and even if it's a traditional way or indigenous. Because I know in the West, people go to San Pedro ceremonies, like or peyote or mescaline. I think overall the compound in there. So it would be nice to take your perspective.
Yeah, I met Peyote in New Mexico when I was living with the medicine woman there. She's part of the native church there, and in the U.S., the native churches, the Native Americans, the Mexicans, they're allowed to use peyote in their spiritual services, their religious services, and it's a small cactus, and it's beautiful. Um, and we were preparing them for ceremonies, so I got to do a lot of preparation and cleaning them and dehydrating them. And then we would microdose on them, meaning we would take the smaller buttons, you call them buttons, and we would suck on them while we were working. And it was like a non-intoxicating dose in the sense that microdosing is just like under the level of your perception. It's not making you hallucinate or see colors or things like that. It's literally just creating this very subtle sense of well-being, a subtle sense of, you know, your mood is uplifted. You're just like a little bit more present, you know, maybe a little bit more sensory aware. Like it's very, very subtle, like the changes that I experience. So I got to work with that for a few months. And I just really, more than anything, just felt a real reverence for this plant that has so much power. I think we really take for granted the incredible, and it's not just psychedelic plants. It's like ginger or turmeric or garlic. I mean, I think we just take for granted the unbelievable power of plants to like impact our physiology, to impact our immune system, to impact our nervous system, our endocrine system, like our systems of our body. Like they have a lot of power to impact us. And I think we take that for granted. And some of the psychedelic medicines, because they're even more potent, I think it sort of increases our awareness about that relationship, that human plant relationship. So yes, I worked with peyote there. When I was in Guatemala, I worked with all the medicines, like non-psychedelic. I was doing the herbalism course. So I worked with like all the herbs and all the flowers and tobacco, and we looked at how they're grown and how they're used and how they affect the blood and how they affect, you know, everything, like all different aspects of human physiology. And one of the medicines we worked with was psilocybin. And so I started working with psilocybin. I started microdosing. I've been doing microdosing for about 2 years with psilocybin, meaning again, a non-intoxicating dose. I take it like I take a vitamin. When I first did it for like the first year, I was doing it like every other day. Now I do it maybe once a week. And it comes in a capsule, and it's literally just, for me, it just creates like an inner sense of calm and resilience. For me, it feels like it's regenerating my nervous system over time, really kind of strengthening that sense of. It's so challenging to put into words because I don't think we really have a language around this yet. But you know, I think that when you're in your most burnt out, stressed out state, and you have that feeling of like always having that adrenaline rush, always needing caffeine to get through the day, always feeling like a little bit tired, even if after you had a good night's sleep, like all those kind of symptoms that are like just a little bit prohibitive, right? They're just like you feeling like a little bit not good enough. My experience with the psilocybin was it was restoring those systems. You know, I wasn't attracted to drinking alcohol. I was less attracted to all the caffeine. I felt like something was being regenerated inside of me. And I don't know the scientific language for that, or if that's like what the scientists will say, but that was the feeling for me, was that it was just creating sort of an inner fortitude that was new and refreshing. And I continue to adore psilocybin. I just think it's the most beautiful medicine. And then I worked with ayahuasca twice. That was an entirely different experience. My experience with ayahuasca is that it's like a fire hose to your soul. I mean, if there's junk in there, if there's anything that's stuck in there, like psychic energy, emotional garbage, if there's like anything that's like just stuck in there that like you've been trying for a long time to process and digest and purge and release, and it's just like, oh, you're crying and crying and crying about it, and it's just not leaving your body. my experience with ayahuasca was she just like goes in and she just sweeps the house in 4 hours. I mean, it's like when you go to the dentist and they like do a deep clean on your gums and they just like, you know what I mean? You walk out and your smile is shiny. Like that's what ayahuasca was for me, like a very deep cleaning of like just psychic energy and emotional garbage and stuff. So the reason I describe these different experiences is because I think that's part of the subtlety that people need to explore with these plants, you know, in the same way that you're going to feel different if you have ginger versus garlic versus turmeric versus honey versus tobacco, right? Like all of them have their own unique sensations, right? And that's just part of the exploration process. And I think we all need to kind of do that. I don't think that there's one size fits all with medicine, just like I don't think there's one size fits all with food or with fitness or with meditation or with therapy. I think everything really to be the most effective it needs to be customized to the individual.
Yeah, I love that aspect.
Yeah.
With your experience with ayahuasca and different medicines on small doses as well, I think it's great that you share these to give some insights and different ways of working with the medicine. We always like to bring the harm reduction aspect of what it is and how you would explore them. And of course, there's a growing body of like people experiencing re-traumatization and also you probably know about the facilitation sort of compromised and can be damaging and can be quite dangerous. So I'm guessing in your experience, it's directly proportional to how you screen the person or the places that you are exploring these medicines and environments and the setting and the intention, all of this. And I sense that you're somebody who's really connected, or at least exploring the nature as part of us, and you know, not just the psychedelic medicines, but there is this whole natural herbs and different kind of medicines. They are medicines, right? The turmeric you talk about, the ginger, and all of these are also medicines. So I guess depending on where you are, your understanding, because I have this idea that all these medicines we ingest, they actually interact with the container being us, our bodies, and where we are on our consciousness level, evolution, and the level of work that we have done, decluttering, all of these emotional decluttering. So depending where we are, I think the medicine then meets us there. So what would you say on that? Is that kind of accurate, or people just, because there's always these, you know, facts like, oh, you know, this medicine will do this for you, and then the person experiences and nothing near or similar to that what's been said, and there's a whole lot of expectations, disappointments around, as you can imagine. But my take on always has been, you're the container, and the medicine will be communing with this container of yours, right? So therefore, the impact or the benefits that you will receive is dependent on that.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying so many important things. I mean, you're talking about managing expectations. You're talking about the intention that you're bringing to it and how it impacts each person individually. You're talking about the people that you work with. Like in all the stories that I told you, right? There wasn't just the plants, there was the people, right? There was the medicine woman, there was the teacher, there was the facilitator, there was people involved. And nothing exists in a vacuum, right? Like I might have had an experience with peyote or ayahuasca with different people, and it might have been a totally different experience, right? So you can't ignore the influence of the environment, and this, we call it set and setting in psychedelics. Like you can't ignore the impact of your intention and your setting and your environment and the people that are facilitating it. It's all really critical. And it goes back to what you were saying about how, some cultures are a little bit more conservative about this and a little bit more resistance about this because we don't have trained facilitators. Like we're in a hurry to kind of put people through trainings and coaching so that they can, start to do this work. But we're playing catch up because there's a lot more people who are wanting to do the medicine than there are people who are trained to help them do the medicine. So we're trying to catch up, and we're trying to create those ethics and standards, right? There's no standardization. There's no like national license or something like there is for a physician or a nurse or anything that kind of says you meet this national standard to be doing this kind of work. It's all still very much developing, and it's a very new industry, and so you have to be really careful. The way I made the decisions I made was by connecting with people in the community and getting referrals from people that I trusted in the community, and like listening to the experiences that other people had, and testing to see if I felt safe, and to listening to my own body when I was in these environments, and listening to my own intuition, like, does this feel like a good thing or a bad thing? And we've been trained in Western medicine to give our power away, to just let the doctors make all the decisions on our behalf. And part of the journey of holistic healing and plant medicine and this, a lot of it is about taking your power back. It's about being accountable. So I think everything you're saying is really smart. We have to manage expectations. We have to find good people to work with. We also have to, relearn if we've lost the feeling. We also have to relearn how to listen to our container. I like how you mentioned this container. How do we listen to the container and the signals that the container and the messages that the container is trying to provide when we're having exposure to these different things, and not just plants. Like, you should be listening to your container all the time. Like, are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Are you tired? Do you need to move your body? Like, your container is talking to you all the time, and how well are you listening to that and paying attention to that is like a critical part of the self-healing process too.
Yeah, I love this perspective. One of the reasons I'm into the holistic medicine and alternative medicine, just because, I'd like to highlight this point you made about, in the Western model, we just give all our, what did you say, like the permission to the doctor to decide, make a decision for us. We give all our power away. We give, we trust this other person. And yet sometimes they are also learning from the books. How can they know you more than you? And this is one of my passion areas that I'm really passionate about. Exactly what you said. It's about reconnecting to your container and then making those decisions. But unfortunately, if people are in this desperate situation now, this is where we are at in the Western, sphere, because people are making decisions out of desperations because they've been on pharmaceuticals for too long, disconnected for too long, and they don't have the support, the community, the people, and very isolated. So most often than not, when they make these kind of decisions of exploring medicine with random facilitators, as you can imagine, it is more detrimental, impactful in negative ways than it's the opposite of what they intended. So it's always good to talk about these in these conversations, because it is happening right as we speak. So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, you're right on point. That's exactly what the world needs. We're all in the process of doing that now. And I think psychedelics are part of that facilitation and transformation. And I write about this in my book about gradually and slowly kind of finding my power again in the healing journey. So yeah, it's a very profound experience.
I love that. I mean, Gabby, like, you said, I'm glad you say small steps. Like, again, can we please let go of this idea of taking this big portion out of your life to go and do this thing and then come back to live again, or expect to be a fully connected human being? That doesn't exist. And I love this small step-by-step approach to anything, especially when it comes to reconnection to the self, right? How can we achieve that overnight? I mean, psychedelics don't do that. They just show us where to begin, perhaps, right? I mean, like, your experience is very profound. I mean, we need to also make it clear to our listeners that I've had I've had really profound experiences with ayahuasca towards the end of my exploration rather than the beginning. The beginning was really traumatic and dark, and it was literally a reflection of how disconnected I was, and that could be very disorienting to most people. And I think these are the stories, they sometimes read and they listen and they watch on video, but I'm always reinforcing that no, like, it's where you are, your container. Medicine will, work differently with each of us. And then, of course, there is this whole patience piece, which nobody wants to know, and nobody wants that patience, right? We just want to dive into the conclusion and to the result. Yeah,
it reminds me, there's this meme that's been circulating on Instagram, and it says everyone wants to do ayahuasca, but nobody wants to do the dishes. Have you seen this one? I keep seeing it because people keep resharing it. It's like, no, you got to do a lot of dishes before you get to ayahuasca. Like, you got to get your house in order. You got to get your health in order. You got to get, ayahuasca is not the thing that you do first. It's the thing that you do after you've been working on the body, and after you've been changing your diet, and like after you've been doing a lot of other things. Maybe you do ayahuasca, but it's not like, oh, everybody's doing ayahuasca, now I'm going to do ayahuasca. That's not listening to the container, right? It's like, there's a lot of other things that you need to do to prepare the body. And I spent 2 years preparing my body before I did the ayahuasca, like really mindfully, detoxing and making changes so that I wouldn't have a terrible experience like you're describing. I mean, these things can be deadly. These medicines can be deadly if you are very, very toxic and you start to purge. It's the same way that if someone has a very toxic diet, you don't tell them to make very dramatic diet changes. You tell them to very slowly take out some of the junk food, and very slowly, because the body can freak out when you make very strong changes. It's not meant to change that quickly. So yeah, I'm glad that you
I love that. I can talk to you forever. This is what we need. I'm so glad you're speaking to this. This is what we need. Yeah. We need to really speak more and more about these changes must come slowly. You even with SSRIs, I'm sure you're aware of it. People want to go cold turkey as soon as they start microdosing mushrooms or any psychedelic medicine. They want to just go cold turkey, which I understand because they've had enough, they've been on it for years. And I understand how this could be a desperate need to come off these SSRIs. But like you said, we can't do that either, right?
No. The chemistry of the body is so delicate. It's so delicate that you could have suicidal ideation for making dramatic diet changes. Like, and people are like, how is that possible? Because the body is it's like a chemistry that is so complex and so delicate that, like, you have to be very careful, and you need a team around you. You shouldn't be making these changes and making these decisions without having people around you to help inform you and to notice if something is happening that you need more support, right? Like, people should be watching, monitoring, checking on you, taking care of you through this process. You have to be very, very careful. These are not, this is very strong medicine. All of it, everything. It's very strong medicine.
Yeah. Even the food, our relationship.
Even the food.
Yeah.
Even the food. Yes.
Yeah. And so our biggest, negative thing that we're experiencing, obviously, in the Western, lives we have here in dense cities and, working long hours and doing so many things, checklists, never ending, infinite checklists, and isolated, right? Somehow we get together, in the West, we get together for like different things, but somehow we don't get together for the real stuff, like checking on each other, or be vulnerable with each other, or at least help each other to get better in physical health, mental health. Somehow there is this competitiveness, and we get together for the wrong reasons, not the right reasons. And one of the biggest aspect of the indigenous traditions I love, the fact that they're always in a community, the fact that there's always someone around for them, which we haven't got anymore here. And we, attempting to create communities over here in the UK as well around these medicines, but generally in holistic approaches of living. And it's very hard, Gabby. I find it really hard to bring people in, because there is this conditioning and some programming that, this thing about we've been coming together for all the wrong reasons, to show off, to compete, to all the wrong reasons you can imagine, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with everything that you said. I think it's very insightful. I think you're 100% correct. I think it's been happening slowly over the past few thousand years, and the indigenous people have been crying, right? You see them and they're always crying, and they're always saying, stop, you're breaking the community, you're breaking the culture, you're breaking the planet, you're breaking all the things, stop, right? We've heard them saying that, and we're like, no, progress, technology, success, no, that's whatever, what we did in the past. Now we have the future. Now we have science. Now we have all these things, and we've had this worshiping of that and the loss of the other thing. And now some of us are starting to realize, oh my God, we've made a terrible mistake. We've gone too far. We've broken all those things. Like you said, we've broken community, we've broken ceremony, we've broken the sacred relationship to the planet. We've broken all of these things. Oh my God. And now a lot of us are turning back to indigenous communities and being like, can you help us find our way back? And we're sitting with them in ceremony, and we're sitting with them, to kind of guide us back. But it's very polarized, some people just want to keep going in the direction that we've been going. They don't care. It's not, they have a different value system, right? Their value system is about more power and more wealth and more progress and more technology and all those things. And so I don't think everyone shares the same values and shares the same vision for the future. I know I'm on the team of learning from the indigenous, because I feel in my soul a lot of pain not being in community with people. And I try to create community wherever I am and live in community wherever I am, and learn about community wherever I am. I'm in charge of community at the Third Wave, right? That's what I'm in charge of. And we live in a transactional culture. Everything is about paying memberships to things and paying for events and paying for medicine. Everything is so transactional, and it's even really hard to find non-transactional spaces. I think the best example of non-transactional spaces is Alcoholics Anonymous. You can go to an AA meeting anywhere in the world, anytime, and you don't have to spend any money, and these people will love you like family. I think that's a really, really good example of something that is, effective and invasive and non-transactional. It's just people loving each other and supporting each other. And, maybe that's a model that we need to copy for these other movements or something. It's one of the only communities that I've seen that's just super effective and doesn't cost anything to be there. So I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. there's a lot of work to be done.
All this healing and all this unlearning and coming back to our authentic nature. Just want to highlight about your AA insights. I think that's really, really critical as well for our listeners. I have this wonderful woman in my corner in the UK, and she's been exploring PIR, which is psychedelics in recovery. So it started in the US. So this is a big movement, and they kind of adopted the AA principles, like you said.
Yeah.
There's no transactional element in it. Everyone's welcome and everyone's not judged, and there's a space for connection. And she wanted to bring some of this to the UK to create communities. And what I loved, one day she said something along these lines. I said to her, what is it that's so powerful and potent about PIR and AA communities? And she said, we are creating a wisdom lineage.
Mm-hmm.
That was so powerful in the Western model.
Yes.
She said, you would have a sponsor, and then you have a sponsee, meaning like you have someone to keep you accountable and help you in the beginning. Someone's already in their recovery like much earlier than you have been. And then the newcomers you would look after them. So there is this lineage of creating a wisdom. I thought that was so wonderful.
It's wonderful. 12-step is wonderful. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. It is, and it's everywhere in the whole world, and it's online. And I think it's a good model. I think it's a good model of what could be possible. Because it doesn't say like we have to give up our modern life, right? Or we have to go like live in the Amazon or something. It's saying like it's completely integrated into regular life. It's just, it's an excellent program.
I think so. Like, especially with veterans and, all these people that are more vulnerable and they need help more, and communities like almost the key. And then bringing the psychedelics in, psychedelic medicines into the mix. I think that could be a very powerful model.
Yeah.
This is so powerful stuff. Thank you so much for coming here with us. As we're coming to the end of our conversation, please tell us what are your current projects and what you can share with us and our audience, how they can connect. I'm sure we'll have all your links, but just like last words of wisdom as well.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing that I want to say is that the reason I wrote my book, All This Healing is Killing Me, is so that people would take a moment to look at their own healing journey. That was the purpose of writing it. The purpose of writing it was not to become, like a famous author. It was to create a reflection for people that they could look at all the things that we're talking about here today, look at their habits, look at their lifestyle, their beliefs, their journey, and take some time to like think about that and reflect on that and make conscious decisions about, what they want to do going forward. And so that's the intent of the writing, is that I hope that it gives people an opportunity to reflect and that people will take some time to think about their own journey. And yeah, if it inspires people to do that, then I've been successful with that project. And then at Third Wave, for anybody, I'm building community there. We're launching an app in June where we'll be connecting with everyone and anyone who's enthusiastic about psychedelics, whether you're a provider, a clinic, or, just a regular person who's curious. And so you can find me at Dr. Gabby Pelicci everywhere on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and all the channels. And don't ever be afraid to, reach out. Don't hesitate. I love to connect with listeners and with community and do whatever I can to be helpful. So thank you so much, Susan, for this time and this conversation. I hope that it provides a lot of value for people who are listening.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm sure I'll encourage again our audience to reach out. I love it's like a directory. I think you're talking about having screened and trusted facilitators in the space, people, facilitators and programs. That's a wonderful project.
Absolutely.
Thank you for putting this together, and
yeah.
And hope to have you back very soon and follow your journey, and to just to stay connected with you.
I'd like that very much. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. And if you want to share something or comment or reach out to Dr. Gabby and myself, you can do that in the comments. Don't be shy. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye for now. Thank you so much for joining us. Psychedelic Conversations podcast is designed to educate, inform, and expand awareness. For more information, please head over to psychedelicconversations.com. You can also share with your friends or leave a review so that we can reach more people. You can also join us in our private Facebook group to keep the conversation going. This show is for information purposes only, and it is not intended to provide mental health or medical advice. Thanks for listening.